Strong opinions and great conversation. Delmar and Davetti on CJAD 800.
Supriya, in case you didn't know, Israel is the worst, most horrific nation on the face of the earth, at least according to many in the United Nations. And right now, let's chat with Hillel Neuer. He is the founder of UN Watch, which does just that. They monitor UN activities, particularly those when it comes to Israel. And he joins us now. Mr. Neuer, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to be with you guys.
Now, this is a very, you'll be speaking this week about this at the Canadian Institute for Jewish Research event, which is on Tuesday night. More information, go to isranet.org. The one thing that I found most interesting about the subject of your talk is how often Israel is condemned by the United Nations. It seems to be a little bit disproportionate.
Yeah, well, that's putting it mildly. Israel is singled out systematically throughout the United Nations Human Rights Council. There is one agenda item at every meeting that looks at the world, 193 countries, and then there's one agenda item on Israel alone. No other country in the world, not Sudan, not Iran, not Cuba, not Syria, which is slaughtering its own people. The latest figures are nearly 100,000 people have been slaughtered, has their own agenda item. But Israel, every session has a day on Israel, and in that under that rubric, about 50% of all the resolutions of the Council in a typical session are against Israel. You sometimes have a session where there are more resolutions condemning Israel than address the rest of the world combined. So it's really beyond all proportion. It's obsessive, it's pathological, and it doesn't just hurt Israel, it hurts the Palestinian cause, and it actually hurts the credibility of the United Nations human rights system itself.
No, absolutely, and I'm really glad you mentioned that it hurts the credibility of the UN itself as a whole. So, I've said multiple times on the show that I think it's a completely useless organization at this point, especially they seem to have this Israeli obsession. So why do you think they still keep going after Israel so doggedly?
Well, Israel has become the object of a scapegoating routine that has almost become, it's ritualistic. There's an automatic majority. It doesn't spring up on its own, but it has already acquired the force of a ritual. It was and continues to be initiated by Arab and Islamic states, which are very powerful at the United Nations. There are, as I mentioned, 193 countries. Of those, more than 25% are part of the Islamic group. There's 56 states. They are very determined. A good part of their politics is condemning Israel. They're indeed, the Islamic group called the OIC was founded with the express purpose of going after Israel. That's really their raison d'etre. And that's their agenda. And then the Arab countries, among them are 22 Arab countries. And then you get this automatic majority. Now, historically, the Soviet Union was a big part of this. The communists were trying to hit America, so they went after Israel as a sort of a soft target. But today, it's an automatic majority that embraces much of the third world. All the dictatorships vote for it. If it's Chavez or Castro or China or North Korea, they all vote for it. And then also you get a number of democracies. You get countries like South Africa and India, which still have an anti-colonial third world agenda and vote for these things. And you do get some other democracies, some of them in South America, which follow their interests, such as oil, money, or vote trading. The Islamic States have 56 votes. You vote for us, you vote for us on the Israel issue, and then we'll vote for you on whatever your pet issue is. So it's a very cynical horse trading that occurs.
Tell me about the man from the UN who's in charge of investigating Israel, Richard Falk, and signed that he could be incredibly biased.
Dan, Richard Falk is a character that we couldn't make up if we tried. We really couldn't make it up if we tried. This is an individual who was a professor for many years at Princeton University, one of the great universities of the world, teaching international law. And yet, over the course of his career, there's never been a tyrant or mass murderer, certainly from the Middle East, who he has not embraced as somehow a victim of the West. And just to name a few examples, in 1979, when Ayatollah Khomeini took over Iran in the violent revolution, which has led to murder, rape, persecution of hundreds of thousands of people and sponsorship of terrorism worldwide, Richard Falk wrote an op-ed in the New York Times as a leading figure that he was in the human rights and international law community. And he said, I met with Khomeini, and the title of the op-ed was Trusting Khomeini. trusting Khomeini. You couldn't make this up. And the article argues that Ayatollah Khomeini offered a new model of democracy for the world. And over time, this is 1979, but you fast forward to 2001, terrorist attacks on 9/11 in America. Richard Falk says, we don't know if maybe the neoconservatives did 9/11. So you all think it's Al-Qaeda and bin Laden and the 19 hijackers, but it might have been Bush and Rumsfeld and an inside job. And he's one of the leading figures who endorses books along these lines. He suggested that the Boston bombings were the fault of America, the American global domination project, and Tel Aviv. And what's important to note is that Richard Falk has been condemned by the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon for supporting 9/11 conspiracy theories, for undermining the credibility of the United Nations. He's been condemned by U.S. Ambassador Susan Rice, who's a great supporter of the United Nations, a defender of the UN. She's condemned him repeatedly, said he's offering a despicable sideshow. He's got to leave. The Canadian government, John Baird, and a few days ago, Jason Kenney, condemned Richard Falk. The British government condemned him 2 months ago, which is very rare for London to condemn a UN human rights expert.
We have to cut you off. I'm sorry, Hillel Neuer, because we're run out of time. But however, more with you tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. on the Tommy Schnurmacher Show. Also, you'll be a part of the CIJR's 25th anniversary. That's the Canadian Institute for Jewish Research. Tuesday night for tickets, go to isranet.org or 514-486-5544. Hillel Neuer, if you want to watch, thanks so much.
My pleasure.